All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everyone, this is Jeremy here. I just wanted to take a minute and say thank you for joining us. And also, we are going to give other attendees a chance to come in the next 5 minutes or so. So if you can, we'll hold off until then just to give everyone a chance to jump on if they're running late. So we will start relatively shortly, so feel free to grab a drink or anything like that, and we'll start at 3:05 Eastern Time. Again, for those of you just joining us, we are just waiting for people to jump on in the next couple of minutes, and then we will start shortly. So don't be alarmed by the silence. All right. I think we are just about set to get started. Uh, First, thank you all for joining us today. We know the summer is a time to take off, or some of you are teaching just a few classes here and there and value your free time, so I want to thank you for joining us here today. My name is Jeremy Intal, and I'm the marketing manager at Pearson for psychology. That's my lovely picture, very serious. I promise I smile sometimes. And I cover abnormal psych, developmental psychology, human sexuality, stats, and research methods at Pearson. And that on the left-hand side is Amy Wetzel, who is our digital strategy lead or manager for abnormal psychology, and she'll be joining us a bit later for the Q&A section. So it's the middle of summer, like I said, but there's plenty happening, particularly in the world of abnormal psychology, and with so many changes in the field. We at Pearson wanted to make sure that we provided resources for instructors like you that would help teach to these changes. And some of you may know those changes that are coming along the DSM-5, which was published in late May, and still are adjusting or adapting to those changes, or are still holding off to see how the department adjusts to those changes. So more specifically, we're here today to provide you, the instructors of Abnormal Psych, a more thorough walkthrough of our virtual case studies. Virtual Case Studies is a brand new learning tool found within my Psych Lab for abnormal psychology courses, as well as some introductory courses and other psych courses as well, that allows students to explore how disorders really develop. It's got a lot of us excited here at Pearson for the past couple of months and up till now, and from the feedback that we've gotten from instructors like yourself during the several months of product development, apparently you guys are excited as well, and so we're really happy to share with you how far we've come along and what will be ready for fall classes. Like I said, some of you are familiar with virtual case studies within Pearson's My Psych Lab through our reviewing over the past several months. And now we want to do a deep dive into these simulations. We're also here to answer any questions about the product itself. So many of you have asked us how to use these simulations in class, what problems virtual case studies solve, and some have even asked about how it would work with Writing Space, which is a new writing tool within my Psych Lab. And we'll get to most of those questions in a bit, and any additional questions you may have at the end of the demo. So hold tight. If you do have questions, I encourage you to check out the chat box on your GoToMeeting box on the right-hand side and send us any questions that you might have, and we'll be happy to answer those at the end of the demo. So what is Virtual Case Studies? Virtual Case Studies, found in my Psych Lab, is a new science-based interactive simulation where students can explore how a number of risk factors and protective factors may impact the development of a psychological disorder. Virtual Case Studies really tries to engage students through captivating narratives that they advance, allowing students to explore and critically think about the influence of biological, psychological, social, and cultural factors, as well as observe how a virtual character moves along a continuum known as a wellness scale, which we'll show you shortly in the simulation. Another interrelated thing with what Virtual Case Studies actually is what problems does it solve? Why did we create this in the first place? And primarily, a lot of instructors, such as yourselves, mentioned during the months and months of product development and ideation that critical thinking was one of the most important factors, learning outcomes that you wanted to achieve within your abnormal psychology class. And it's really difficult to measure critical thinking, but we definitely understand what it takes to help encourage students to exercise critical thinking. And as we walk through the simulation, you'll see how we try to do just that with virtual case studies. Another thing that instructors like yourself mentioned was that engagement was a huge piece of the puzzle that you're trying to solve within abnormal psychology. A lot of students come into the class and are already engaged with the material, but really want to apply that engagement in some way. A third thing here, as you'll see on the slide, is empathy, and that's primarily related to the fact that a lot of these students who are coming in and taking abnormal psychology classes might not have direct experience or immediate experience with some of the disorders or some of the topics covered in the class, and it's really important to humanize a lot of these things that they encounter that might seem a little bit too far-fetched or foreign to them. And lastly, many of you also mentioned that it's really difficult to emphasize with students how important the dimensional approach to abnormal psychology really impacts how you understand the concepts learned in class. And that's another thing that we wanted to address with the virtual case studies. And you'll see how we try to address that with the wellness scale, as well as the multifaceted factors that are taken into account, both protective and regressive factors. So let's jump into the actual simulation here. As most of you are familiar with MyPsychLab, this is the landing page for MyPsychLab, and virtual case studies will be found on the left-hand navigation. So I'll click on here. So yeah, when you log in, the first screen you'll see shows a menu of options. This is where you and your students can select the appropriate module or disorder to explore. For the fall, we'll have 4 modules available. There'll be anxiety, depression, substance abuse, and eating disorders. In this case, it'll be anorexia specifically. Once you select the module, you'll be presented with a screen to give you some background on the disorder. So let's select eating disorders for this demo. Here, you'll also be presented with a definition of the disorder. And as you can see, eating disorders are characterized by caloric intake restrictions, binge eating, and/or purging. Research suggests that a complex interplay of biological, family, cognitive, behavioral, and sociocultural factors contributes to the development of eating disorders. And this is really just to get a bit of information to present to the student and yourself about what disorder is going to be covered without having to jump back and forth between a book. After you're given the definition of the disorder, you can see after you click next, you'll be given 3 pieces of information. The first is the learning objectives. And the idea here is to clearly identify expectations of what students are supposed to get out of the module. So here, the first objective is identify key risk and protective factors for eating disorder development and to evaluate the interplay among risk and protective factors in the development of eating disorders. The second bit of information after we click next will be the wellness scale. So students are introduced to the wellness scale, which they'll be seeing throughout the simulation. And so the wellness scale will follow the target character, in this case Anita, throughout the simulation. The idea here is that students can visualize the progression or regression of a disorder on a continuum, with 100 being the most optimal health, in which there's no experience of any kind of disorder, behavior, or functioning, and 0 meaning the most disabling expression of that disorder. As we progress, you'll see the character's level of wellness move across the scale, left or right, depending on how students choose the character progress through the simulation. The third and final bit of information that the student will get before the actual simulation starts is the before you begin piece. Here we wanted to make sure that there was a disclaimer to let students know that what they're seeing in the simulation is just one example of a path, that many people experience disorders in a whole range of ways and experiences, and that these are not true-to-life events. These really don't depict any sort of predictive or tree branching model in which there's a perfect recipe in which a disorder develops. And we want to just make that disclaimer out in the open for students, especially because there are a lot of misconceptions within abnormal psychology for students who haven't been exposed to the field previously. All right, after the introductory, we'll be introduced to the simulation. And we are offered 3 different scenarios here on the left-hand column. And you'll really be given a scenario in which each represents different biopsychosocial characteristics of the character. And again, as I mentioned, in this case, it's Anita. So the scenario 1, Anita is the oldest of 3 sisters. Anita's mother and maternal aunt both had anorexia nervosa when they were younger. So these factors that we're reading here on the scenarios will have a differing impact on Anita, where she starts on the wellness scale, and potentially how a disorder develops, if at all, within Anita as the student advances Anita throughout the simulation. So let's select scenario 1 here. And here we'll be given a summary, a little bit more of an extrapolation of what we read in the very brief description of scenario 1 in the previous screen. So here, Anita's mother and a maternal aunt both had anorexia nervosa when they were younger. Anita started gymnastics when she was 3 and competed all the way through high school. She was successful and highly perfectionistic. Anita was incredibly vigilant about what she ate and counted calories regularly to make sure that she balanced her energy intake with her energy expenditure. So here we see that she's starting between 80 and 70 on the scale, so some mild difficulties or symptoms are present. And we could advance to the next screen and start the scenario. Again, you were given a baseline score, or the students were given a baseline score and it maintains here on the wellness scale in the top right-hand corner. And after we select the scenario, we also go back quickly into the scenario and are given a bit more of the background of Anita. So here, Anita appears to have risk factors associated with development and maintenance of eating disorders. These factors include possible biological or childhood predictors and personality traits, both known to be prevalent among individuals with eating disorders. And this is really an opportunity for the student to get to know what factors are present and they should be looking out for throughout the simulation as Anita progresses throughout. And it really is just a primer for students to take into account these various factors that will or will not contribute to the development of a disorder. So if we jump back actually to the beginning of this simulation, after we go back to the learning objectives, wellness scale, before you begin, we select scenario 2, we could see we actually start elsewhere on the wellness scale for Anita. And this was really by design, and we'll talk a little bit more about why we gave that functionality at the tail end. But it goes to show how different factors, different preliminary factors were taken into account prior to the selection of where Anita fell in the wellness scale. So we'll get back to that in a little bit. I just wanted to show you that functionality quickly. So back to scenario 1 after we click through. All right, start the scenario. And again, since we were on this page earlier, we'll click next. This page after the first initial setup is a little bit more about the person that Anita is. The narrative that we really wanted to interweave with the simulation was something that students really resonated with. And we wanted to make sure that for the students specifically, that Anita was someone that was relatable, a college student themselves, and that there were some personal traits that could or could not, may or may not contribute to the development of the disorder. And that's what we really wanted to achieve here, is a reflection of the complexity of all the factors that may or may not be present in influencing the disorder's development. So we'll continue on here. So the bulk of the simulation is what you see here, which is designed to allow students to influence, explore, and discover what happens next for a character and how those selections might influence positively or negatively where the character falls in the scale. For instance, in this scenario, Anita's trying to start for the gymnastics team. Are we interested in option 1, 2, or 3 in her progression? So option 1, we see that she gets to the first practice and feels that all of the other girls there are thinner than she is. Option 2 is she makes the team by the skin of her teeth and is worried because the other girls seem to have better training. Anita can't stop worrying about her performance. And then there's option 3, she makes the B squad but is happy just to be on the team. And so the student has the option to select any of those and see where that path essentially takes Anita. So here, let's choose option 2, in which she makes the team by the skin of her teeth. And the next page, it's a summary of what the student chose and a little bit of an extrapolation of what that potentially means to Anita and her progress along the wellness scale. And here, I'll just quickly mention, Anita appears to be showing difficulties with negative affect, which could indicate she also has anxiety problems. So these are a couple of things that students want to focus on once they select a certain path for Anita. Students are provided immediate feedback like this, and based on their selection, they'll be determining whether or not, or why rather, Anita is moving left or right on the wellness scale. So we'll advance. Again, this is another situation that isn't directly connected to, say, Anita's interest in gymnastics, but we wanted to showcase the importance of the varying experiences that influence the development or regression of a disorder. So here, after tryouts, Anita decides to go to a party with her roommate, and she drinks Spike Punch without knowing she has never had alcohol before. It's also important to emphasize, I'll jump in here quickly, that there are always positive options for students as well as negative options that might contribute, much more negatively to the development or progression of a disorder. And it's very important to emphasize that with students, because as much as I'm sure they'd like to see a disorder either regress or progress, there are options that might also be neutral for them and Anita. Okay, so we'll advance, we'll select option 2 here. Again, you get a suggestion at the end based on the result or the choice that the student made, and we'll advance. And here, this is a screen that shows a little bit more about Anita and what she does outside of choices that may or may not be taken into consideration, at least on the student side, with whether or not a disorder progresses or regresses. She decides here that she really enjoys volunteering at the local animal shelter, and this could positively or negatively affect Anita, but that is for the student to critically think and assess as they're progressing through the simulation. Again, here's another option. As with most students, as with all students in college, hopefully, they experience the stress of taking exams, a full load, not having enough time to study. But this, again, is just another scenario that could contribute to the progression or regression of a disorder. Right? As I mentioned earlier, there are some options in which we'll maintain the wellness of Anita, not necessarily progressing or regressing along the scale, and this option was one of them. Here on this screen, as we advance, we see another situation in which Anita either could develop more symptoms that are indicative of a disorder or not, but there isn't an option for the student to choose where Anita goes here. And that was by design. This is primarily to highlight a feature within virtual case studies in which a lot of instructors really encouraged us to continue and even add more content, and that's the In Another's Words videos. So I'll click here. So here in the In Another Words section is an opportunity to provide real-world examples of individuals who have actually struggled with or encountered the disorder that's covered in the simulation. And these videos really help students develop empathy and critical thinking as students apply their virtual experience with Anita and the other simulations to real-world examples. This contrasting of the experience with real people and the experience that students have had with their simulated character, like Anita, really helps to build empathy among students who have, previously not have thought of these topics and have normal psychology as relatable. So here, you're given a quick situation in which students are given text that connects Anita with the video that's played underneath. So you'll see here that there's Stacy, who has experienced binge eating, who may or may not currently struggle with it, but it gives a perspective, a personal and humanistic perspective that adds on to the experience of the virtual case study. And there are videos throughout the simulation that students can see. And it's just a nice break for the students to take away something a little bit more tangible and maybe more relatable than a virtual case, or enhance their experience with the virtual case study itself. And I didn't mention this earlier, but you'll see on the bottom right-hand corner, I have it on mute right now, but there's actual audio with the virtual case studies with every slide. And it's up to you or the student to play the audio so that those who would prefer to learn through audio as well as reading have the option to do so. So from here, we'll just jump ahead to the final screen. We'll make these selections at our leisure. Again, these are all different scenarios that students will progress through. And they'll be thinking about what these decision points mean, but for now, we're going to jump up to the final screen just to show you what the simulation at the end actually looks like. Click next. Okay. So here you could see some tailored feedback based on the decisions you or your students made for your character. This is the virtual case study summary report, essentially. On this page, you'll see that there are 5 variables measured throughout the simulation, and these are disorder traits or symptoms, co-occurring difficulties, negative or positive life events, personality traits, and protective factors. This summary report is all based on actual research of the disorder. This wasn't made up in any way. We consulted many instructors about this content, and this is the result. And we want to make sure that no medical advice was prescribed nor assumptions made about the character. This is primarily for the student's benefit to really take into account all those varying factors that could have or may have contributed to the progression or regression of a disorder's development. So here, actually, after we scroll down, this is the summary, and we select next, we have the option of going back to the scenario selection. And again, like I showed earlier, we have the option of selecting a different scenario for the student. So we could select scenario 3, where Anita was much healthier than either scenario 1 or 2, where she ended up between the low 70s and the high 60s. And this was, again, by design to reinforce the fact that students who go back through the simulation explore the same character who's found herself in different preliminary circumstances and really critically assess what factors played a role in the development or the regression of a disorder. And so it's just a great way for students to go back and not check their work, but really critically assess what happened in the first simulation versus what happened in the second simulation, and so on and so forth. And that really just about does it for the virtual case study for eating disorders. That really was run through in about, I want to say, 15 to 20 minutes. For students, it'll take about 30 to 35 minutes to run through each of these individual simulations. And that's by design to give you, the instructor, the most flexibility in assessing what it means to see the development of a disorder or the regression of a disorder, and give you more flexibility in assigning any type of work to the virtual case studies without bogging it down by content that we provided. But it really does help promote critical thinking, engagement, empathy, and reinforce the dimensional approach that is so much more popular now than it was previously, and it is much more embedded in the literature of abnormal psychology than in previous years. So now we'll open it up to any questions that you may have. Feel free to type them into the chat. I see we have a couple of questions already, and we also have a couple of common questions that we've been asked throughout the past couple of months during product development that we'll gladly share here. So again, someone mentioned how this will be available, or in what way this will be available for instructors this fall. I think I mentioned it earlier. Virtual case studies won't be available standalone. It'll be available through MyPsychLab, which is what we're on right now, and really it's an enhancement to any learning type structure, especially to encourage students to actively engage and apply the material that they're learning in class, and it'll be populated here in about a week, actually. So if you have a MyPsychLab account, you are more than welcome to check out virtual case studies for yourself. And if you have early classes, these simulations will be available. Well, 2 will be available in a week's time. The 3rd module will be available in mid-August, and the last one will be available by the end of August. Like I said, these simulations take about 30 to 35 minutes to complete. So it all depends on how you want to assign them. And another question that just came up is, how would you assign something like virtual case studies? Because as you see, it really isn't a multiple choice style exam where they submit a grade, and there's no right or wrong answer with how students decide to progress in the simulation. So one of the suggestions made by the instructors is that this would be a great way to anecdotally reference and experience for students in a safe environment when they're writing essays, end-of-term papers, or even in class exams, in which they reference their experience with a simulation, such as Anita, and really identify some of the protective factors that may have led to the regression of a disorder. So that's one way that we would encourage that. Other instructors suggested using the simulations as a discussion topic or presentation topic for students in class. So it will essentially enhance the research that students do on their own within their book, and provide anecdotal reference for those students in a way that's relatable to them, and enriches the conversation in class. And that's what we've been told by instructors so far. All right. And we have another question about how how the simulations cover DSM-5 material. There's no direct integration of DSM-5 content. The wellness scale is, however, based on the Axis 5 commonly found in the DSM, and the Axis 5 which is used for diagnoses. So in virtual case studies, as you saw in the simulation, we try to help hammer home the dimensional approach to disorders with the wellness scale. The wellness scale really allows students to see the varying degrees, really a spectrum of a disorder's development or regression as a result of critical variables that students themselves identify. All right, we have another question about being able to go back within the scenario. Right now, we don't have the availability to undo a decision, and that was also for obvious reasons to us, primarily because we wanted to reinforce the fact that decisions made for individuals or decisions that individuals make can't be undone in real life. And really, the student has the option to redo the simulation after they pass along through the entire simulation and go back and change their decision points and critically assess what the differences are between option 1, 2, or 3, depending on which option that they select. We also have some questions about text availability. I'll get to that at the very end. So I'll get to that in just a second. But someone also asked, how was the content determined? Who was the author of virtual case studies? The author is Dr. Armando Pina, who's a professor of psychology at Arizona State University. He's helped check the content of this work, as well as a bunch of peer reviews by professors and instructors like yourself, tweaking different aspects of the simulation. And we decided upon these 4 current modules because they were voted on by very many instructors as the most commonly covered disorders within their abnormal psychology class. So that's how we ended up with the 4 currently, and then we'll be developing 3 more in time, hopefully, for classes in January. So we had another question about my psych lab and what else is available. We have the Speaking Out video series. I don't believe I mentioned this earlier in the simulation, but the Speaking Out video series is found within my psych lab as well, just above virtual case studies. And there are 4 updated videos, some of which reflect the new coverage in DSM-5. And you'll see here where it says new, there's a new video for binge eating disorder, and then gender dysphoria, which is new to DSM-5, has also been added. And this is another great way to build empathy among students who really may or may not be able to relate to some of the information presented in an abnormal psychology class. And then the other thing that was mentioned was writing space, how they could pair this simulation virtual case studies, that is, with writing space. And we will have a writing prompt ready for all instructors for this fall that directly assigns a writing assignment for instructors to their students via writing space. All right. And writing space will be found here on the left-hand nav as well within the next couple of weeks. And all right, I think we have time for one last question. I think someone asked when the vital text updated for DSM-5 will be available. It's actually available now. So these here that you see on your screen, jump to it. These 3 texts from our author teams here at Pearson, all of whom have been working diligently throughout the past couple of months to really make sure that the content was updated, but not only updated but also accurate. They've been working long days, long weekends to make sure that they would have these texts ready for instructors like yourself by fall, and they've hit all their deadlines. They've worked really hard, and we're really proud of them. and they are the Bidle team, the Butcher team, and the Nevid team. They've all revised their content that has been updated for DSM-5 changes, and they are all accurate to a T, and that's why we waited so long to revise them. But they're ready now, and if you have your book orders in place, they're ready to be shipped. So they'll also be available via eText on my PsychLab, which we were just on. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to email myself, Jeremy Intal at Pearson.com or Frank.Alarkin at Pearson.com. And we're happy to help you guys out with class setup, with how to integrate virtual case studies in your class, or even just talk about other psychology courses that you might be teaching this semester. But that about does it for virtual case studies. If you guys have any questions, again, email either Frank or myself. We're happy to help out. But for now, thank you all for joining us. And this will be recorded, so if you have any colleagues that would like to see this video, we're going to post it shortly, and just email us and we could send you the link. But thank you again, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.